Chapter 1 of Plow Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Plow Stories by Clara D. Pierson. Introduction. Long ago, before people had learned to write and to figure as we can, thousands of years before America was discovered, there were in the Orient the beginnings of many things, and beginnings are very interesting. If it were not for beginnings, fine and finished inventions could never be. It is a great and wonderful thing to have a new and useful idea. Each of us begins life as a tiny baby with no real ideas at all, and little by little each baby begins to have ideas or thoughts. Other babies have had the same ideas before he was born, but to him they are quite new and interesting discoveries. When he is older and has learned to talk, he and other children begin to compare ideas and learn from each other. There is always this wonderful thing about a fine idea. You can give it away and yet keep it. You cannot do that with money or food or any other kind of things. The great countries of the world, with their different languages, were like babies who could not talk to each other at first, but they had ideas which made them do things. The first idea in every country was always the same: food. In only very few countries can people keep well and strong without sowing and harvesting grain. Up in the frozen north they can, but elsewhere they must have grain, wheat, corn, rice, and other grains of which we hear less. At first every man was a farmer, planting and harvesting what he needed for his own family. Later on, people began to divide the work, and some men raised grain to exchange or sell. Grain has to be sown on soil that has been broken up and stirred, and then it must be covered with earth so that it may have the darkness, moisture, and warmth that it needs for growing. Besides having the right food ready, within reach of its tiny rootlets, as soon as those begin to appear. We do not know certainly in which country they first learned to plow the ground, because there are no records to tell us that. But we do know that in several old Eastern countries people had learned to plow thousands of years ago. It may have been in Egypt, or it may have been in Assyria or Babylonia, or it may possibly have been in some other Oriental country. What we do know is that men were making rude plows in all of these lands before they began cutting pictures on stone in Egypt, or engraving them on clay to be baked into brick in Assyria and Babylonia. Numbers of stone and brick pictures have been found in these lands, and many of them have been brought to museums of Western countries for people to see. We know what the very early plows were like. We know that after nations were older and knew each other better, they exchanged ideas, and all were wiser and wealthier for doing so. When this happened, men began to improve their plows, but it took thousands and thousands of years, and the thought and labor of many wise people to develop such ones as are used in this country. Now we have different kinds of plows for different kinds of soil, as well as for different kinds of crops. Every man who discovered even the slightest improvement to a plow has helped thousands of people whom he never knew. When the Bible speaks of the blessed times of peace, it says, "And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more." When, in 1872, people were sick and weary after our Civil War, men of different countries met in the City Hall of Geneva, Switzerland, to make peace plans. The room in which they met was then named the Alabama Room, and in it there were afterward placed a plow made from swords which had been used in war, and a pruning hook also made from old weapons. There have been terrible wars since then, and there may be more yet, but the wisest men and women know that metal made into weapons brings sorrow and death, and that metal made into farm tools brings health and happiness. Learn all you can about plows. Even if you live in a great city, city people would soon starve if there were no plows and plowmen at work to raise food for them. Not even the strongest locomotives or the most wonderful printing presses are so necessary to us as plows. Learn all you can about them. End of chapter 1.